wake up on the ground. No mattress, no walls, just cold air on your skin and the sound of something moving in the grass nearby. For 99% of human history, this was simply Tuesday. Today, you would not survive the morning. That is not an insult. It is a fact backed by decades of research. Your body still carries the instincts. Your mind has lost the skills, and the gap between the two is wider than you think. Let's start with the walking. Before you even eat, you are moving. Not for exercise, for survival. Anthropologist Richard Lee spent time in the 1960s studying the Zhou/Honsi people of the Kalahari Desert, one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer societies on Earth. What he found broke almost every assumption people had about primitive life. Adults were not exhausted. They were not starving. They worked on average only around 15 to 20 hours a week to meet their basic needs. The rest of the time was rest, conversation, and play. Sit with that for a second. 15 hours. You probably spend more time than that just commuting and answering emails. But here's the twist you were not expecting. Those 15 hours were brutal. Every single one of them required skill you do not have. Tracking an animal is not walking and looking down. It is reading bent grass, broken twigs, the angle of a hoofprint, the age of a dropping, the wind direction, all at once while moving fast enough to keep the trail warm. Children started learning this before they could read. You, right now, could not follow a rabbit 50 feet through open brush without losing it. So what happens when you get hungry? In the modern world, hunger is an inconvenience. You open an app. 30 minutes later, food appears at your door. In the world your ancestors lived in, hunger was the entire plot of your day, every day, for your whole life. There was no pantry. There was no fridge. There was only what you could find, catch, or dig up before the sun went down. Water is where things get even harder. You know intellectually that you need water, but do you know how to find it? Not from a tap, from the land itself. Hunter-gatherers read landscapes the way you read a map app, except there was no map. Certain plants signal underground water. Animal trails often lead to it. Depressions in rock hold it after rain, if you know exactly where to look, and if you get there before the water evaporates in the desert heat. Miss it, and you are not thirsty. You are in danger within hours. This is where the myth falls apart, and it is worth naming directly. For a long time, popular culture painted hunter-gatherer life as brutal, desperate, and short. But the anthropologist James Suzman, who has spent years studying the Zhou/Honsi and writing about the deep history of human work, argues that this picture is largely wrong. Suzman's research suggests that many hunter-gatherer societies were not scraping by in constant crisis. They were in many ways the original leisure society. Abundant free time. Deep social bonds. A relationship with scarcity that looks nothing like the panic modern people associate with no supermarket. That does not mean it was easy. It means it was a different kind of hard. The hardness was in the skill, not the suffering. Now picture a full day. You wake at dawn because there is no artificial light to keep you up, and no alarm to wake you early. The group stirs slowly. Someone rebuilds the fire from the coals. This is not a simple task either. Coals need to be coaxed, fed small kindling, protected from wind before you can even think about breakfast. You do not have a lighter. If that fire goes out and no one nearby has one either, you are starting from friction, from a bow drill or a hand spindle, sweating and failing for 20 minutes before you get a single ember. By mid-morning, the group splits. Some go out to gather. This sounds passive, almost easy compared to hunting. It is not. Gathering requires knowing hundreds of plant species by sight, in every season, in every stage of growth, and knowing exactly which parts are edible, which are medicine, and which will make you violently sick or kill you outright. The anthropologist Polly Wiessner, who studied the same Zhou/Honsi communities, and specifically the way they used conversation and storytelling around the fire at night, found that this knowledge was not just practical, it was social currency. Passed down through stories told after dark, memorized by children who had no books, no diagrams, and no second chances if they got it wrong in a real emergency. Meanwhile, others go out to hunt, and here's where your modern body truly meets its limit. A hunt is not a chase in the way movies show it. Many hunter-gatherer groups practice something called persistence hunting, where hunters would run an animal not fast, but for hours in the heat of the day, until the animal overheated and collapsed. Because unlike most four-legged prey, humans can sweat efficiently across their entire skin. This is one of the reasons researchers believe humans evolved to be upright, long-distance runners in the first place. It is a stunning adaptation. It is also completely useless if you have never trained for it, do not know how to track the animal you just exhausted, and could not identify its trail even if you were standing on it. By the time the sun sets, the group gathers again. No screens, no lights beyond the fire. And this is where Wiessner's research becomes especially interesting. She found that daytime conversation among the Yu/Huansi was mostly practical. Complaints, coordination, logistics. But nighttime conversation around the fire was almost entirely stories, myths, gossip about distant relatives, jokes. This was not idle chatter. It built the social trust that held the entire group together, because in a world with no police, no hospitals, and no safety net beyond each other, your relationships were your actual infrastructure. If the group did not trust you, you did not survive a bad season. This is the part that should genuinely unsettle you. It was never really about the physical hardship. Cold, hunger, and thirst were real threats, yes. But the thing that actually kept people alive was social. Belonging, reciprocity. Being someone the group would still feed if you got sick or hurt and could not contribute for weeks. You today could probably learn to build a fire with practice. You could learn to track, given a few years. What is much harder to rebuild is a community that would carry you unconditionally through a bad season, the way theirs did. And that is the real reason you would not last a day out there. Not because you are weak, because the skills you would need, tracking, fire starting, plant identification, water finding, were things children absorbed over a decade of daily practice. Not something you can pick up by watching a video the night before. Your ancestors were not superhuman. They were simply trained, from birth, in a curriculum modern life has completely erased. Here's the strange part. In some ways, agriculture and everything that came after it made life more secure but also more fragile in different ways. Farming tied people to one patch of land at the mercy of a single harvest, a single drought, a single failed crop. Hunter-gatherers spread their risk across an entire landscape and an entire social network. When one resource failed, they moved or leaned on relatives, or shifted to something else the land still offered. You in your modern life have made a similar trade without realizing it. You have traded broad, personal survival skill for narrow, specialized skill, backed by a system of strangers you will never meet, from farmers to truck drivers to power plant workers, all keeping your refrigerator full. That system is remarkable. It is also completely invisible to you until it breaks. So the next time your power goes out for an evening, or a delivery is late, or your phone battery dies and you feel that flicker of real unease, notice it. That is not weakness. That is your body remembering something your mind has forgotten. That for almost the entirety of human history, survival meant knowing your environment intimately and never being truly alone in it. You wake up on the ground, and this time, you understand exactly why you would not last a day. Not because the past was harsher than you imagined, because it was smarter than you imagined, and you have simply forgotten everything it once taught you.